Folks, my fear is this Epstein thing is a trap and that congressional Republicans are falling in it head first. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome to the What's Right show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. Yes. Okay. Let's tell you. Well, here's what's cooking. Right as we were on air yesterday, congressional Republicans began their hearings on the Hill together with their colleagues on the Democrat side. Massey getting together with Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California, to spearhead this effort. Now, this is always troublesome, this type of bipartisanship. You can't but help think that the Democrats are in possession of some information that the Republicans aren't. Because typically, Democrats don't go into any bipartisan activities unless there's a guarantee of success for them. I have always believed this. When Democrats talk about bipartisanship, generally speaking, they mean Republicans doing what Democrats want. And naively, again, in my opinion, when Republicans talk about bipartisanship, there's a sincere effort to work across the aisle. It never works out for the GOP. So here we are. Epstein's back in the news. Because this is a current event-driven program, I'm going to cover it. I'm going to talk about it. Now, without getting into all the mechanics, by the way, it's fascinating. Right as I was on air, and I said this yesterday, I said that if the Republicans, if the members of Congress are intent on shining light on the Epstein debacle, then they ought to release the information, the documents that they have. They've got reams and reams of evidence. A subpoena power is magnificent. It is invested in Congress. So they've got this material. Release it. Well, they must have heard me, Robbie, because they did release it. They put it out there after the program and looking, and lo and behold, Comer is announcing that they're in the process of uploading all these documents. Okay. So here's what earth-shattering news we have so far. Not much. And in fact, one of the more interesting things from the press conference held by the lawyers is that there isn't a client list. Why? The lawyer for the victims literally says, well, if we're going to put together, I guess we know about some people that are alleged to have had victims trafficked to them via Epstein. So if we need to, we'll put a list together. So there's no list apparently by admission of a lawyer representing the victim. So now just to reiterate my core position on this. I think Epstein is vile. I don't even think I need to say that. And for me, Epstein is a representation of the power of the deep state. What I loathe about Epstein is the amount of protection that he got from an all-powerful government, from his connections to an all-powerful central government, a government that then later conspired for a whole set of different reasons against my president and against many ordinary Americans who supported him. That to me is the fundamental story of Epstein, beyond all the sexual perversion of it and obviously the crimes against children. So, I mean, you're not fine. I'm not defending Epstein. I'm just concerned that Republicans are stupid and doing stupid stuff. What is one of my key concerns here? Why do I have this concern? In other words, well, these lawyers, and I say this, folks, as a trial lawyer, as an injury attorney, which I am, that's my day job, although I am one of the very few who I believe has his head screwed on straight. So these guys and gals, if we're to include Ms. Gloria Allred, are die-in-the-wool Democrat activists. The top lead lawyer for the victims is a guy named David Boies. Boies is Like, Boys is a top Democrat donor, a top Democrat activist. He has represented a number of high-level Democratic causes and is no friend of Trump's. I'll put it that way, as plain as I can. And everything today, when it comes to the Democrats, not us, I understand. This is why I think Republicans get caught with their pants down on this stuff. Everything for Democrats is through an anti-Trump lens. Everything that they are doing right now is fighting for political survival. And we've documented well on this program over the last however many months that the Democrats are in death throes. They are absolutely losing everywhere they look. Now, the clear takeaway from this would be that the Democrats ought to regroup and figure out a new strategy. That's not what they're doing. They're not doing that. Instead, what they are doubling down on is the Trump hate. And so, again, this is one I believe this with every fiber of my being. The Democrats have identified in this an opportunity to strike at Trump. Now, yes, I understand the victims. I'll play the tape. The victims were interviewed by the mainstream media, and none came out to say that Trump was in any way implicated in any of this. But this debacle is going to be used to derail the administration. By the way, Robbie disagrees with me. Robbie, I'm not here to throw you under the bus. Actually, I'm letting the audience know that we had an honest disagreement about this, and that it was not a monetary bet. I didn't say we were going to bet any money, but I did promise Robbie that I would come on air and acknowledge you were right and acknowledge I was wrong if in fact this does not backfire on Massey, on the Republicans in Congress, and particularly on Trump. But I said that because here's the fundamental problem. Well, Robbie, I'll tell you what Robbie's position is. This is the other side of it. Producer Robbie is a very astute gentleman and follows the news. And, Robbie, it's fair to say you love Thomas Massey. Consider him to be a principled member of Congress. Massey has been getting under my skin the last little while with his theatrics. I don't like theatrics. I understand he has his principles and whatnot, but do you know how many times he went along? I know he went along with Democrats on spending, I'm just with Biden. So to me, it's a little performative. He had his reasons. There was only one or two times. Understood, whatever. But he's performative, in my view. And right now, we have a very critical time period in which we're saving the country. The reason Trump was elected, the reason Trump is in office, is to save the United States of America. And there's things we have to do. We've got to clean up the border mess, which of course Trump has already did very quickly. And we have to go around the country door to door and forcibly remove all of these illegals that the Biden administration ushered in. We've got to fix the census. These are fundamental things. We've got to fix public safety. We have to create an environment in which the Democrats are not allowed to once again in the near future do to the country what they did in the last 4 years. These are critical things. And so you get hung up on things like national debt, which is Massey's big thing. Fine. National debt isn't going to matter if we become an Islamic republic, which is where the Democratic Party will take us to where Great Britain is. The Democratic Party will take us where Germany is. These are cautionary tales that we talk about frequently here on the program. So that's my take on Massey. And Ro Khanna, I understand Ro Khanna. Robbie was a moderate Democrat. He's a Democrat from California. It's all I need to know. So my little, hairs on the back of my neck are, standing up. And I hear these lawyers talking, and I know exactly what these Democrats are like. these Democrat trial lawyers. And I know it because many of them are my colleagues. I know these people. I know Gloria Allred. She despises Trump. You mention Trump, Gloria Allred starts foaming at the mouth. Everything they do is with a get Trump objective. It's how they see the world. It's like binary. Pro-Trump, anti-Trump, black, white. It is like that. And so when you are taking a process that, in my view, ought to be apolitical, okay? You know, getting at these names and figuring out who did what ought to be apolitical. Charging individuals where the statute of limitations hasn't passed yet ought to be apolitical. But it's deeply political. And Trump, by the way, who has, almost perfect instincts, has backed away from this. And I know it looks bad, but he understands something that maybe many of us don't, which is to say he understands that this is going to be used as a cudgel against him, as a new Russia collusion hoax. And he is sensing it. He sees it coming. And his entire push here has to be just, look, we're moving on. We got a country to run. And along come the congressional Republicans, and they're like, we're gonna do this, FIFO-FUM. I hope I'm wrong. Now, I'll tell you I'll give you a couple of legal insights into this, how this becomes all deeply problematic beyond just Trump. I'll put on my lawyer hat for a minute and tell you something you won't hear anywhere else. So stay tuned. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, the What's Right Show, brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, not a crazy liberal law firm. 702-820-1234.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam & Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right Show is on. You can reach me at What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter, and of course, my email that I check throughout the show, sam@whatsrightshow.com. So, I am going to play. Here is a clip of one of the victim's lawyers. This guy is a sexual abuse attorney, and he's getting up there. This is where he says basically two things that I think are important. One, there is no list. Well, we'll compile a list, he says, so it doesn't actually exist. There's not some, naughty and nice list of Epstein associates. And the second thing is, notice how he is talking about these accusers. Pay close attention to what he's saying.
So we've created somewhat of a list. Most of these individuals, the victims, are very scared to say these names because they could get sued, they're going to get attacked, and nobody protected them the first time. And that was against one person. So is there a list? There is a list, but just to dispel kind of the common theme here, every one of these women was abused by Jeffrey Epstein, and his scheme was to personally abuse women. When they reached a certain age, he did farm a section of them, some of them, out to some of his friends. That doesn't mean all of his friends. With that said, I'm more than happy to assist in helping create the list behind the scenes and see what we do with it.
Oh, so the list hasn't been made. And it wasn't all of his friends. It was some of his friends. There's one other thing that he said. Well, they were protected against one person initially. At first, the way I heard that was Epstein. Like, what I heard in that was that he's talking about Epstein. Now, this is where the lawyer brain kicks in. The context of that little statement there about these accusers, these victims, not being protected against these powerful men who would, I'm calling them men. I mean, essentially we can assume that's what they were. These powerful men who abused them, and they then, publicly came out and then were sued and whatnot. Who's the one prominent person that was accused here who fought back vigorously? What? Dershowitz, right? It was Dershowitz that got accused that he had participated in this, and Dershowitz went scorched earth because, and folks, I think I take his word at this, because he prevailed in every way, shape, and form. He just basically, it was all a farce. And, that was a moment where, this is very important. This is me talking as a lawyer. Do I want to see pedophiles burn? I am a father of daughters. The answer is hell effing yes. If I could take pedophiles and throw them into some sort of a roasting pit, I would do it without even a second thought. But I also understand the immense power of a wrongful accusation. I understand also that these victims, while society and the mainstream media puts them up on a pedestal, because the minute that you are in the society a victim, you claim special status, right? But as sad as it is, they were young when this happened. Memories fade. Plus, they all talk amongst themselves. And when you get individuals that have been through difficult times and through trauma, who maybe, just maybe, given that they were trafficked like this, already were in a weakened emotional state, weren't, the most healthy of kids, then talk amongst themselves and reinforce stories that maybe aren't exactly accurate, recall names that aren't accurate. There are people going to be accused here who are maybe innocent. Do you know what the stain of an Epstein sex trafficking accusation is on the reputation of an innocent person? This is immense. So I hate to be the voice of reason here, and I understand many of you want to see everybody here just die a painful death. I get it, and but I'm just urging a little caution. The reason that this is a common sense program is that I like to balance the equities here. So this is going to be a major problem. Imagine it's your life that gets upended by an accusation like this. Imagine you're somebody who, did business with the guy and knew that he hung out with models, didn't know it was there. Lots of people didn't know this about Epstein. Now, Prince, look, can we name a name? Can I do that? I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it here. There is no way that Prince Andrew didn't participate in all of this, right? Prince Andrew is hanging out with Epstein, photographed with him, strolling through Central Park in New York, chitty-chatting, after Epstein had been already arrested and did jail time for diddling underage girls. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be, if I find out that my best friend in the world was messing around with young girls, there's no way in hell I would ever be in his presence again, by choice. Right? So that's an example where it's cut and dry, where I'm convinced that it's true, and I'm willing to say that, the guy Andrew participated in this. He's a complete degenerate, by the way, as is, frankly, the entire British royal family. That's for another day. But that's where we're at. All right. So this thing isn't easy or straightforward. Now, by the way, did Trump do anything? A panel of these victims spoke to the mainstream media, to NBC, and elicited this response.
I do have to ask, and I know, and it's just something that I think we're compelled to at this moment, with the attention on President Trump, with these questions around a pardon. Did anybody see or hear of the president himself doing anything inappropriate as it related to Jeffrey Epstein?
No.
They went around the room. No. Okay. All shaking their heads. So and again, I've said this from the beginning. Robbie, I've been consistent about this since the LA days when we were on KBC. I've always said this is not Trump's MO. Trump's he likes developed women, right? This guy's not out there with kids. Okay. That's all I'm going to say. All right. Now, I'm going to move on. I'm done. Oh, no, I'm not. I want to talk. Pam Bondi. You know what? I still have to get it. Seriously. This is where it all went wrong. I'll be right back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Nevada's favorite recovering Californian behind the What's Right microphone, 'tis I, Sam Mirejovsky, reporting for duty, sam@whatsrightshow.com, my email, and of course on X, formerly known as Twitter. You can find me at What's Right Sam. Hey, gotta tell you, Robbie, this great story. I haven't said this, I didn't tell you this morning. Great story about a listener. So I think one of our oldest P1 listeners, Robbie, is a guy named Chris. And Chris is a Czech guy originally, right? His family's Czech. And Chris lives in Thailand, of all places, does business in Thailand, and travels to Europe and back to the U.S. Fairly often. And so he's in the Czech Republic, and he is messaging me on X, on Twitter. And he's poking around town, and he's figured out, he's a smart guy. He's figured out where the Mirejovsky Palace is located, HQ, when I'm in the Czech Republic. So, and by the way, my house is beautiful. A beautiful house in the Czech Republic it's a Baroque house in the center of town. Fashionable little townhome in a great spot. Now, it's 400 years old. So the internet situation at my house is problematic, and I have I got the whole Musk thing. I got that. I got my Starlink. I got a separate thing. It's not the best thing because there is no internet connected to the house. Anyway, I get this photo from a listener, from Chris, of my house. Hey, I think I found your house based on my description. So he sends me a photo of the house, and I look at it. Now, I haven't been there for a month and a half, Robbie, and I see it's all dug up. And I'm like, I'm zooming in, I'm pinching, I'm looking at the at the picture there that he sends me, and I see that it is the phone company that's digging up the sidewalk. So I call my property manager. I'm like, hey, I think we're getting fiber. I think we're getting fiber internet. My listener from the show has sent me intel, and sure enough, he confirms with the phone company that the fiber is getting installed. But I have to apply to get it routed into the house, and better do it now while the sidewalk's all dug up than do it later and have to pay for that excavation. So, Chris, you did me a good turn. I really desperately appreciate that. Thank you. And see, this is what happens. We become a family. We look out for each other. So I had to share that. Just absolutely hilarious. Now, one last thing about the Epstein mess. I still stand by the fact that what Pam Bondi did, what the DOJ did with that stupid binder stunt was awful. Now, at this point, I'm not here to call for Pam Bondi's ouster. I defer to Trump and his judgment on what to do with Pam Bondi. But whoever decided to do that, I assume it was her because she gave some statements about it, public statements. We're going to release the list. We're going to release this stuff. In light of what the attorneys for the victims are saying that, well, there's not a list. We're going to put one together. Girls, let's work on that now. It's even more ridiculous what she said in all those press conferences, teasing something that wasn't. It just was amateurish. It's fundamentally amateur. So I just had to I had to mention that just to just tell you. I don't want us as Republicans to fall into the same performative, performance art mode that our friends on the other side of the aisle are constantly engaged in. I want to rack up wins. I want to be the party that does, not the party that talks. I want Republicans to deliver while the Democrats devolve into a theatrical display of histrionics. Let me give you an example of a win. Yesterday Trump released on his Truth Social account a video of a drug smuggler's boat getting blown straight to Hades. It was a beautiful thing to see. I remember, I think I mentioned it yesterday. I saw it while we were on air. I believe I mentioned this. This is great. This is what we voted for. And you know why? Why was that my visceral reaction? Because year after year after year, more and more young people are dying of fentanyl. These drugs are flowing into the country unabated. The border was wide open. And, and I had to have conversations as the father of 3 kids, 2 of them are teens, had to have these conversations, the wife and I, sit them down and go, look, kids, we know you don't do drugs. We don't, but do not take anything from anybody, anywhere, at any party. Because when I was a kid, and Robbie, when you were younger, I mean, hell, like if we went to a party and somebody was like, here, you want to do some cocaine? I never did it, right? Or here, you want to smoke some weed? I did any drugs in high school or college, whatever. But it probably wouldn't kill you. It would take really a lot of effort to die on your first trip. But not now. Not now. Something that previously would have been a rite of passage for youth to try something, to do something, sends you straight to the morgue. So did I feel badly for those drug smuggling Trendoregua Venezuelans in the little Speedo boat going through the water, getting blasted by the U.S. Navy? No, I did not. In the slightest. Rolled off like water off a duck's back. I was like, that is fabulous. Now, talking about wins. Here's the win. It's not just eliminating the drug runners. It's not just increasing the cost benefit analysis in our favor, in the favor of public safety and against the drug dealers, by making it that much more dangerous to do these missions. The real win came when the entire left responded to Donald Trump in a chorus of condemnation. Well, this isn't good. Well, we can't do this. Well, And all of a sudden, like that, Trump got the entire left of the country, all the Democrats, he got them to be on the side of Trendoregua and the drug smugglers. The Democratic Party comes out full bore, supporting the people that are killing your kids. Now, this is, of course, par for the course. It's what Trump does. I mean, he got Jessica Tarloff, useless hag on Fox News, got Jessica Tarloff to tweet out support for a poor, innocent child rapist that was getting arrested in Washington, D.C. By the way, she took down that tweet later after discovering the guy's background. He's gotten all these top Democrats to come out in support of crime. Oh, crime's normal. Crime's just baked into the puzzle, from Jamie Raskin to everybody, right? They're all saying this stuff. Trump even got a sitting U.S. senator to go down to El Salvador and have margaritas with a known smuggler, human trafficker, somebody who's probably put kids in harm's way, right? If you believe the allegations. I'm starting to think Trump is a mentalist. Like this, he is getting the Democrats to wig out. And this is why, again, going back to Pam Bondi, we can't afford these unforced errors, and we don't have to be the performance artist party. It's not our movement. We're a what you see is what you get movement. At least that's very much where I want to be and where I want to be positioned. So, yeah, I mean, look, some of the tweets. Drug trafficking is a crime, not an act of war. Traffickers must be arrested, not summarily executed. By Kenneth Roth. John Jackson writing, this is problematic. The U.S. just executed a drug dealer without any due process, a trial, or any appeals. What's the limiting principle? What other kinds of criminals can we now execute without warning? And what is this intervention? A war? How long? What's the mission? I mean, hey, the war on drugs, as certainly right now, I think Venezuela is going to be made an example of. Maduro was on TV the other day saying how we should work together with the U.S. I mean, he's literally, I think, is freaking out that an invasion is imminent. Venezuela is a rogue state and a country that has been a thorn in the side of the United States for far too long, and it's shocking to people in the know. When you talk to people who've been in the military and special forces, in Army intelligence, it's shocking that we haven't taken the Venezuelan threat more seriously, because they have been sending literally narco-terrorists into our country. And then you've got Martha Raddatz at ABC saying, well, this apartment building wasn't taken over by Trenda Aregua and blah, 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 blah. Literally providing cover for the people that are killing Americans on a daily basis. And Trump's doing something about it. And again, the left has been psyched into a reactive, and that's the stress on it, right? Reactive response. If Trump does it, we're going to say it's bad, no matter what it is. We're going to say it's bad. And the more of these things that Trump is able to get the left to do, the more times he's able to get the left to wig out like this, I think the better, certainly for Trump, and the worse for the Democrats who do this. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. I'm a firm believer, folks. The Democratic Party as presently constituted is deeply broken, but you will find no greater a broken group, no more a damaged bunch of people than the never-Trump, anti-Trump Republicans. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome back to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam & Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. Now, let's see. CNN yesterday. CNN had on Abby Phillips, had, of course, Scott Jennings, and he was one of the panelists there, Jonah Goldberg. Now, Goldberg, once upon a time, was a reasonable conservative Republican. I bought his books once upon a time. I read his book. To me, this is so absolutely insane to watch the devolution of Goldberg. Now, it fits in with this reactive response that people have where Trump says one thing, and so they find a need to immediately argue for the opposite, even when it makes no sense. Now, there's two particular moments here I want to share with you. Now, the first one has to do with immigration. You know, everybody is screaming that what Trump is doing with the Department of Homeland Security, what he's doing at the border, what he's doing with deportations, is a constitutional crisis. And Scott Jennings just shuts this down. And there's really no response to it once you frame it the way that Jennings does. So here's Goldberg ranting, and of course then Scott Jennings on Abby Phillips' show last night shutting it all down.
He's declared 9 emergencies since he's elected so that he can violate all sorts of constitutional norms when it comes to deporting people and all sorts of other things.
Do you believe it is violating constitutional norms for the president, the head of the federal government, the head of the executive branch, to be enforcing federal immigration law? Because a big issue here, there are over 500,000 illegal immigrants in Illinois. I suspect most of them live in and around Chicago. Why wouldn't you surge federal law enforcement resources to the place where that many people are violating federal law?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I've said this a number of times. I think I mentioned it yesterday. Immigration law is federal law. It is the duty and responsibility of the federal government, led by the President of the United States, to secure the border and to certainly to remove any hostile aliens, actually all aliens that aren't authorized to be in the country. It's all pretty straightforward. Now, there's a huge debate that is percolating. We'll get more into this next hour as we talk about crime, which is one of the most winning topics for Trump. This issue is the winning issue for Trump, for Republicans, for everybody. And that you have a Republican, a so-called Republican like Jonah Goldberg, taking the Democratic talking point, which is the crime in Chicago isn't the fault of our politics. It's the fault that all the red states have guns everywhere. Like, it's Alabama's fault. Alabama has too many guns. So ergo, people are getting popped in the south side of Chicago. Listen to this exchange. Once again, Jonah Goldberg gets called out by Scott Jennings.
So I'm all for crime reduction, but the conservatives who are celebrating this, you listen to the mayor of Chicago talk about the gun crisis in America. Well, what is to stop, given the precedents that Donald Trump is setting, what is to stop a Democratic, a Governor Pritzker, a Governor Newsom to say, we have a gun crisis in America, just as legitimate on the facts arguments as a crime crisis, and say we're going to send the National Guard into states to go get their guns.
What? That's what was said. Now, let me give you. I'll tell you the response. Scott Jennings' response. Okay. It was centered around the First Amendment, right? So, Second Amendment. Excuse me. So it's in the Constitution. The Second Amendment says you can't interfere with that. So it's like prima facie, actual constitutional violation instead of some fictitious constitutional violation that you're proposing. My take on this is is the position of Jonah Goldberg and others who oppose Trump's use of the National Guard to come in and clean things up, are you equating a door-to-door confiscation of guns from law-abiding citizens with the National Guard in D.C. going and removing hundreds of illegal firearms in the possession of unauthorized people, i.e. felons, illegal aliens, etc.? Is that really what is that equal? My God, I think, folks, I think this is how badly broken the opposition is. Now, is Australia less free? By the way, they did a gun confiscation there, and also in New Zealand. That was another country that did a gun buyback and a gun confiscation. Are they less free? Yes, I would argue absolutely. I mean, you look at some of the laws, the draconian laws coming down in both those places. You look at that crazy prime minister that they had during COVID. I mean, they were locking people up for COVID violations because they could by order of law. And also, when the people scream here, when the left screams about how Trump has broken all these norms, remember that here in the U.S. during COVID, look at what they did to us in the name of a national emergency. Have we forgotten that you couldn't go to church, but you could go to Costco? Have we forgotten that you could go to a George Floyd protest, but you couldn't sit with your dying parent in the hospital? Have we forgotten that, you could still go to, that Gavin Newsom went to the French Laundry in Yountsville and Napa and had a $100,000 dinner while, he shut down beaches for ordinary Californians? And this is all stuff that somehow we've forgotten, but the left is in no shape to lecture Trump or anyone else on constitutional norms, on decency, and on abuse of emergency powers. More people are dying in criminally overrun, poorly managed, under-policed blue cities than ever died of COVID. Simply on a numbers to number, basis. I mean, this is a far greater emergency and a continuing emergency. So reclaiming our American cities and demonstrating that they can be made safe is a top priority, ought to be a top priority. So let's get into it. And by the way, this could end up being the determiner of what Democrats survive the era of Trump, which is sort of a broader topic unto itself. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Well, we know the Democrats are the party of it's not my fault. But this latest pivot on crime is a new low, even by their standards. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian, behind the What's Right microphone. The Democrats have all in unison pivoted to the argument that it's the guns. It's not that we defunded the police. It's not that we're letting criminals out of jail. It's not that we're not keeping criminals in jail. It's not that we've enacted restorative justice measures that looks at a perpetrator's background and gives them empathy, right? Empathy for the tough life that they've had, goes easy on them. And of course, by logic, makes it more likely that they reoffend, knowing they'll get away with it over and over again. It's not any of that. It's red states pumping guns into America. Now, I tell you, it's a talking point that's been disseminated. They've decided that this is what they're going to talk about. And it started with the mayor, Brandon Johnson. This guy, Mr. 14%, I think, in the polls, approval rating. His own people despise him. If the election were held tomorrow, he'd get voted out of office yesterday. So here is what he said about this just yesterday. Have a listen.
We will never be able to end gun violence in Chicago as long as the president continues to allow tens of thousands of guns to be trafficked into our state and our city. The vast majority of guns do not come from Chicago. They are not made in Cook County. They are not bought in the state of Illinois. These guns come from red states. They are coming from Indiana. They are coming from Mississippi. They are coming from Louisiana. And that is the harsh reality, whether Republicans like it or not. Occupying our city will do nothing to solve this problem. None of it will ever be enough until the president decides to end the mass trafficking of guns in our city. For every gun that the Chicago Police Department fights to get off the streets, 2 or 3 more new guns come into our city. Chicago will continue to have a violence problem as long as red states continue to have a gun problem. Shootings will continue as long as this presidential administration continues to put politics over people.
You get the impression, Robbie, that these guns are appearing in Illinois, in Chicago, much like cash appears in Fannie Willis's house. Just sort of fungibly sprouts up Now, what do you make of this? A brilliant diversionary tactic of blaming red states for Chicago's crime problem. Well, it doesn't work. It statistically doesn't work. The top 15 sources, okay, state sources for firearms in Illinois, so every firearm that is recovered in Illinois in the commission of a crime, they trace where the gun is from. And from January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2023, this is the last available year that we have for the statistic, the top source of firearms in Illinois is Illinois. Let me repeat that. By more than 3x, because the next highest state is Indiana. By the way, Mayor here, Johnson, blames Indiana in his remarks. The number 2 state is less than 3 times lower. So Illinois, 9,100 guns. Indiana, 2,700 guns. Who else does he name in this remark? He talks about Mississippi and Louisiana. Well, Mississippi is number 5, and Louisiana isn't even on the list. Louisiana, where the hell did these people are just making stuff up? Now, before Brandon Johnson was mayor of Chicagoland, we had Mayor Beetlejuice, otherwise known as Lori Lightfoot, who must have been the most hideous person in politics in the United States of America. And I say this with all due respect. Lori Lightfoot, today on CNN, former Chicago mayor, repeated the same lies, the same falsehoods about the sources of gun violence in Chicago.
If he really cared about violent crime, go after the gun manufacturers who are just mass producing these weapons and have no liability or accountability. Go after the gun stores that know that they're selling to straw purchasers that flood into our city. Pass common sense gun reform that we have been begging for decades. Those are the kinds of things that actually would make a meaningful difference in violent crime. He's not talking about any of those things. He will not do any of those things because this is not about violent crime. It's about something else.
Okay. Well, it is about violent crime. It's absolutely about violent crime. People are getting shot. Yes, over the weekend, 54 shot, 7 killed. I mean, every time these people get on TV and they talk and they say this stuff, they're basically telling the 7 families planning funerals they don't matter. That's what's so upsetting about this. Again, the Democrats have decided to circle the wagons, and that includes Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois. Same thing today on CNN with John Berman. This is what Senator Durbin said.
What do you think people feel like is happening in Chicago?
Well, I tell you one thing they feel like. They feel like there are too damn many guns in Chicago, and they're coming in from other states like Indiana. Federal government want to help us stop this flow of weapons into our city of Chicago and state of Illinois. We know they're coming in from state with lax laws when it comes to firearms, and the federal government can do something about it. What has this president done about it? He's dramatically eliminated the people who are supposed to make sure these gun dealers are held to the law. That's an important step to really reduce the crime in the area and reduce the concern of local officials.
Durbin is 80. Just had to look this up. 80 years old. He looks dead. Okay, well, listen, he's still in office. Durbin was a political force when I was a kid. How long has he been in the Senate? Well, I'm not going to go look that up now, but quite a while. All right, so again, this is so wrong and such a bald-faced lie. Here, I mean, again, to repeat, of the guns recovered in 23, total guns recovered in the commission of a crime, over 9,000 were from Illinois, right from the very state where the crimes are happening. The next nearest group was only 2,700 from neighboring Indiana. So, I mean, literally Illinois 3 times as many guns as the state that is getting blamed for being the source of all these guns. So it's, by the way, the total of all outside states is 7,500. So it's still less than from Illinois. And Illinois is a state, I mean, we've gone over the gerrymandered maps, and obviously this is true in the state legislature. They've got a Democrat governor, they've got a Democrat legislature, they got Democrats everywhere. If they don't like the situation with gun crime, legislate something. Come up with a constitutional law that would protect people according to them. But they haven't done that either. So this whole thing is a farce. It's a farce. And it's blame shifting. This is, I don't know. I mean, and by the way, they're left basically now to defend crime. There was a former superintendent of Chicago PD, a guy named Jody Weiss. And he's like, well, this is sort of, he says leadership is happy with crime. They're happy with it. Let's listen to what he says.
In a Labor Day weekend, 54 people shot, 7 killed. And let's look at the year-to-date numbers. Do you realize that every 19 hours and 58 minutes, someone is murdered in Chicago? Every 4 hours and 19 minutes, someone is shot. And the sad part, you ask yourself, who's shooting who? Who's killing each other? 78% of the victims are black. 81% of the offenders are black. So you've got black and black crime, and yet the governor and the mayor say they don't want any help. So to me, when you refuse help, you're saying you're happy with the numbers, and that is absolutely unacceptable in Chicago right now.
He raises a very important point. There is a major failing by the Democrats in power to protect African-American black communities in their jurisdictions. It's astonishing. No wonder Trump continues to gain support from minorities and from these areas, from these disadvantaged areas. Sam Mirejovsky, be right back. Just a moment. Don't go anywhere, folks.
The Sam and Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Sam Mirejovsky behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. Sam at what'srightshow.com. That's where you reach me. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. Let me tell you something about my firm. Sam & Ash Injury Law. Founded this firm in 2019. Previously, I was at a big firm, and my partner and I, well, we worked together at that previous firm, and we thought we could do things a better way. A way that puts the client at the center of the case, and we do great work. And listen, I realize many of you would never consider hiring a sleazy personal injury lawyer. I get it. If you want the opposite of what a sleazy personal injury firm is, how you imagine it, think Sam & Ash Injury Law. If you or a loved one have been hurt, you're talking to the insurance company, stop it. They're not going to help you. These are woke, giant, enormous corporations that are going to screw you. Trust me on this. Do not do that. Call us, California, Nevada, or frankly, anywhere you can hear the show. We're happy to give you advice. Sam & Ash Injury Law. Our headquarters in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Now, Trump is, I think, gearing up for a cleanup of Chicago, which is why everybody is freaking out about all this stuff. And today in the Oval Office, he's talking about how he's thinking about what city to clean up. He talks about how things are going in Washington. This is what it sounded like.
Washington, D.C. is a totally safe city. You're not reporting any crime because there is none. They said crime is down 87%, and I said, no, it's not. It's down 100%. We have a great thing going. I could do that with Chicago. We could do that with New York. We could do it with Los Angeles. So we're making a determination now. Do we go to Chicago, or do we go to a place like New Orleans, where we have a great governor, Jeff Landry, who wants us to come in and straighten out a very nice section of this country that's become quite tough, quite bad. So we're going to be going to maybe Louisiana, and you have New Orleans, which has a crime problem. We'll straighten that out in about 2 weeks. It'll take us 2 weeks, easier than D.C. But we could straighten out Chicago. All they have to do is ask us to go into Chicago if we don't have the support of some of these politicians. But I'll tell you who is supporting us, the people of Chicago.
Yeah, and he's right about this. If you had a choice between, I don't know, having your kids get shot in the park or your kids not getting shot in the park, I think that's a pretty easy choice. So he's right about this. Now, the subject of New Orleans, remember when we had the Islamic terrorists drive through and kill a bunch of people? Remember the big hat police chief, the scrawny little woman DEI hire standing, whoa, no, why the barricades weren't up, blah, 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 blah. And she had on a hat. It was just, this is what I remember. She had on this hat that was, she looks like one of those North Korean generals, when they're all standing there with their medals. Their hats are enormous, and they're all, these scrawny little guys. What I'm picturing. Okay. He'd go down there and show Big Hat how it's done. Take over the New Orleans police department. And just start cleaning it up. Yeah, well, if the governor, right, if it's a Republican governor and he invites and deploys the National Guard himself and with the president's approval and participation, then fewer legal obstacles. Still, I like what this is doing. It's forcing the Democrats to argue, no, please do not come and enforce crime in our city. Please allow our innocent civilians to continue getting slaughtered. Please allow us to continue to plan unnecessary funerals week after week, month after month, because gosh forbid we do not want to hand Donald Trump a win. Do you know how bad it's gotten for the Democrats? Joe Scarborough yesterday on his show basically said that they ought to invite Trump in, all of them. They just ought to say yes. Chicago ought to say yes to Trump. Joe Scarborough on MSNBC.
We had the mayor of Chicago on last week saying, we don't need any more police officers. Police officers aren't the answer. No police officers. I think he said no 5 times. You look what's happening this weekend. You look so, I actually think that J.B. Pritzker should do something radical. I think he should pick up the phone, call the president, and say, and I know, you don't have the constitutional authority to deploy the National Guard here and to police my. You can do that in D.C. You can't do that in Chicago. But let's partner up. These are the most dangerous parts of my state. We would love to figure out how to have a partnership that's constitutional, that respects the sort of balance of federalism between the federal government and the state government. And let's work together to save lives. Because right now, just hey, nothing to see here moving along. No problem here. Hey, Donald Trump, we don't need you. And, the mayor talking about we're going to protect people's dignity in our city. Well, protect their lives. That's protecting their dignity.
Yes. But does anybody want to tell Joe what the problem is here? The problem is that the Democrats are protecting their political fiefdom. Trump will come in, the National Guard will deploy, so too will ICE, and all of a sudden 500,000 illegal immigrants in Illinois, read a congressional district, basically, will disappear. They'll deport 500,000 illegal immigrants. Well, okay, not every single one of them, but, 350,000 of them certainly are going to disperse. Gonna freak out. Be open season on illegals. That's what they're afraid of. They are perfectly willing to allow innocent people to die so long as their patronage network and their political network, their vote padding, guaranteed win on political power in every election is maintained, is left intact. I say this every show almost. The perversion of the Democratic Party knows no bounds. You would think they would be embarrassed, but no, they go on television and just as if they were reciting the Lord's Prayer, they go, it's red states, it's guns and we don't need this, we don't need Trump, we're perfectly fine here. Nothing to see here, folks. Just 57 people shot over the weekend. Ta-da! It's beautiful. I mean, I think you're seeing an absolute, what would you call this? Self-immolation. That's where you set yourself on fire and just a pile of dust. That is what you're seeing the Democratic Party do in real time. Now, there's an interesting development on the subject of truth. Truth is back in style. And something important happened. Somebody came out to say the truth about the trans issue. A former lib. And I want to bring this up to you here when we come back and make a larger point about it. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Be back in just a few minutes. Making radio great again. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Radio Network. Great to be here with you folks as always. All right. Reach me, sam@whatsrightshow.com. At What's Right Sam on X. Follow me on X, please, because that's where I, by the way, interact with many of you. I love it. And you can send me direct messages there, and I periodically review the ones that I haven't approved and do respond as often as I can. So here is what happened the other day. I mentioned it on the show because it was just so outrageous. There was a guy named Graham Linhan, who is a prominent British guy. He is a comic, a comedy writer. He is a show producer, enormously talented guy who has, I think, has been a fairly left-wing guy, as these Hollywood types are. Anyway, he gets arrested over the weekend, returning back to London at Heathrow Airport for the crime of writing mean tweets. Now, the mean tweet in question was one directed at trans athletes. Trans athletes. Okay. I don't have it here in front of me. That was yesterday, but I think the tweet said something along the lines of, if a woman finds herself in a place where her women-only space is invaded by someone, a man dressed as a woman, she ought to punch him in the balls. I think that was the gist of it. And this landed him in a cell. He was arrested and interrogated as if he was some sort of terror suspect. Now, we are at a turning point on this trans thing. We've gone entirely too far. And incidentally, I remember when we went through something similar to this during the early aughts, post 9/11. Remember how George Bush came out and said, now this is not a time for Islamophobia? Well, Islam had just murdered a few thousand people in cold blood in New York. And our president came out and said, now it's not the time for Islamophobia. Because, of course, George W. Bush and many Republicans at the time were infected with the mind virus that back then we called compassionate conservatism, or they called it this. Now, today, thanks to Gad Saad, a noted Canadian author and professor of Lebanese descent, he happens to be Jewish, calls this condition and I love how he writes his great books, talks about suicidal empathy. This concept of suicidal empathy. That's the better word for it. We are so empathetic as Westerners. We're so kind. We're so nice. We invite violent people into our midst. We embrace them. We love them up, and then they kill us. Whoopsie daisy. It started with Islam. It started with the Islamophobia, and then came this idea, this concept of being transphobic. You can't be trans. Trans people are people too. A man pretending to be a woman is a woman. Of course, what could possibly go around? Letting that man into a woman-only prison. Imagine this. He's in there for sex crimes. What's the guy going to do? He's in prison for sex crime. He goes into a women's prison. He's going to start raping. Gotta be. By the way, this has happened over and over and over again. But you aren't allowed to say this because it's just politically incorrect. It's so mean. You can't be mean to the trans. The trans people are nice. I'm telling you that something changed this weekend with Lincoln's arrest in Great Britain. There is a switch that went off. Do you know who Malcolm Gladwell is? Speaking of a sort of liberal writer, a guy who's written a number of books, he's a prominent guy. And he's absolutely a mainstream guy, okay? This is a guy who has long supported the trans issue, as one does if you're a fashionable liberal man about town. And he came out in the last 24 hours basically saying, I was wrong. Now, what I like to do here on this program, periodically point out these sort of pivotal moments that I think give us some insight of where we're going. I understand we're a news-driven show, yes. Obviously, we are reacting to whatever the news of the day is, but I also want you always to see around corners, to see what's coming. So I'll talk about things that are in the future. I'll tell you what's in the future. I think what's in the future is a complete demise of the pro-trans movement. And it's a good riddance, too, because it's a bunch of sicko perverts. Here's Malcolm Gladwell saying, well, so many words, very nicely. I was wrong.
If we did a replay of that exact panel at the Sloan Conference this coming March, it runs in exactly the opposite direction. And it would be, I suspect, near unanimity in the room that trans athletes have no place in the female category. I don't think there's any question. I just think it was a strange, the reason I'm ashamed of my performance at that panel, because I share your position 100%, and I was cowed. The idea of saying anything on this issue, I was I believe in retrospect, in a dishonest way. I was objective in a dishonest way.
I was objective in a dishonest way. Look, there are people that were brave and spoke out about this early on. So I don't respect Malcolm Gladwell, more than I do a Riley Gaines, or even, by the way, J.K. Rowling deserves some support on this. She's been wrong about a lot of things, including mass immigration and whatnot. But J.K. Rowling of Harry Potter fame deserves credit for an early and very vocal opposition to trans athletes, but just also trans in general. Because here's the fundamental thing, folks. People don't tell you this. There are different reasons. There are different types of transness. The most common one is men wanting to dress as women in public because they are aroused by it. I don't know how else to put this. I understand we're a family show. I'm going to leave it at that. There's a word for it. It's called autogynephilia. Yeah, and this is what it is. You have to understand that. That's why, and men who are aroused by dressing as women, you imagine the level of arousal that then they feel going into a woman's bathroom, a changing room, gym, locker room. God, they're going to be completely. I mean, this was the worst of the worst of the worst ideas to ever allow anything like this to happen. And then somehow, as we had with that one spa in Koreatown in LA, we allowed these trans men, these men who were masquerading as women, to sue, to go and use, and to be, to be allowed into the women's only spaces. We allowed women to be put in harm's way. Incidentally, I keep saying it's like Islamophobia. You know why? Look at the Rotherham scandal. Again, in the UK. Back to that perverted cesspool of a country. The UK, under the guise of being sympathetic to the Islamists, has looked the other way to these Pakistani grooming gangs. They have arrested the victims instead of arresting the perpetrators. Why? Because they do not want to be lacking compassion for these newcomers to the country who are adjusting to Western norms. I think it's perfectly analogous that your purported, whatever it is, compassion, if it's actual or not, doesn't matter, that your compassion, right, your empathy, your suicidal empathy, as Gad Saad calls it, is directed just same way to Islamists as it is to these trans freaks. Oh, we've got to tolerate, and the victims, the potential victims, or even the past victims, be damned. You're irrelevant. We have to protect this ideology, the system that we have, that we're compassionate. You want to talk about woke conservatism? There's a big movement right now. What do they call it? The woke right? Right, Robbie? And I haven't gotten much into this. You know who the original woke right? You know what the woke right? The woke right, and this is a completely different meaning of the term than how they're using it now. The woke right was George W. Bush. He gave us this insanity. He cowed Republicans to go along and play along. I've even done a deep dive on the whole genesis of gay marriage advocacy inside the Republican Party, of which I have to admit, I was a part of. And, you go back to 2013, March of 2013, in advance of the Supreme Court decision legalizing gay marriage, and you had early articles coming out nudging Republicans to wish for that result, supporting it. And there were always 2 or 3 Republican strategists quoted in Politico, among other places. And guess who one of them that appeared in every single freaking article about this? Guess who it was? Rick Wilson. You ever want a group of Republican perverts? Well, Republican is a big word. I don't think they're Republican. Leftists inside the Republican Party, sabotaging the Republican Party. Rick Wilson, of course, going on to co-found the Lincoln Project, the never Trump, anti-Trump movement, with the other guy who actually does enjoy diddling little boys. I mean, the whole thing is a mess. The sooner we ditch these clowns and this suicidal empathy, the better. And it's happening as we speak. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Trump gets pressed again about Vladimir Putin. The media keeps asking him, what are you going to do? What message do you have? Today at the White House, Trump says there is no message. No message for Putin.
I have no message to President Putin. He knows where I stand, and he'll make a decision one way or the other. Whatever his decision is, we'll either be happy about it or unhappy. And if we're unhappy about it, you'll see things happen.
Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Friends, welcome back to the What's Right Show at What's Right Sam on Twitter, on X. My email, sam@whatsrightshow.com. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I'm going to. There's a German election coming up, and a lot is at stake as the so-called far-right AfD party, the party that is supported by Elon Musk, and others, including me, yours truly, surging in the polls. It is an existential threat to the deep state in Germany, a coalition government led by Chancellor Merz. These people are odious bureaucrats, globalists, exactly the kind of people that you and I, loathe. They are a danger to peace. They are a danger to society, and the sooner they're dispensed with, the better. Now, there's a number of publications, to their credit, even mainstream media publications, that are drawing attention to a wild story, which is that there have been a number of high-profile deaths in the last 2 weeks. Well, here, let me pull out the piece. I got it here. I had it here. Okay, this is in Newsweek. Published this morning, 6 far-right German AfD candidates die days within the election. 2 weeks, basically, of each other. The elections, by the way, are going to be held on September 14th, so less than 2 weeks away. 4 candidates running for local office in the northwest German state of Westphalia were killed or died suddenly. Police say there's no evidence of foul play. Now, think about it. By the way, I just saw today that there's a 7th since this article was printed. What are the chances that 6 or 7 members of one political party that happens to be a thorn in the side of the ruling party all die right before the election? I don't know if that's statistically possible. I mean, it is possible, but it's just the likelihood of it is so slim. Now, you know what bothers me about this? Because I have become a bit of a cynic. But just tell me, last 4 years I've seen some shenanigans happen in the world, and now that we look back at how things were done, the stuff that's coming out, for example, about Obama, and Biden and everything they were doing, Hillary Clinton conspiring against Trump in 2015, 2016, we see the lengths to which the left goes, wherever they are, to maintain their power. These people cloak themselves in democracy, protecting democracy, but really they're autocrats. They only want the input of the people so long as it affirms their position, so long as it maintains their political power. The minute the vox populi, the popular voice of the citizenry, wants them removed, they become fascists. So I think what humors me about the story is these are the kind of headlines that you read about Putin's Russia. Well, 3 members of opposition party to Putin fell out of the window last week. Weird. And Putin's the one who gets up and says, oh, no, this just happens. People fall out of windows all the time. And of course, the left-wing mainstream media gets out there and says, well, this is Putin. That's just how he is. It's a police state. But nobody is questioning this in the mainstream media, that you have the quote-unquote far-right party having this happen. And these are, by the way, people, Merz's government, outspoken critic of Vladimir Putin. So much so that I'm convinced, if you're reading some of the smoke tendrils coming out from Europe, parsing through the various bits of intel we're gleaning, that Europe is preparing for war. They're pushing for it with Russia. Now, again, if somebody was a little bit cynical, they would think these people are pushing for war at the exact moment that they are failing in their domestic agendas. They're looking to distract their people from a failed domestic policy as they're overrun by a bunch of terrorists from the Middle East. Their kids are getting raped in England. Kids are getting arrested for wearing English flags. Comedians are getting arrested for saying they're going to punch a guy in the nuts. I mean, right? I could go on and on. So these parties all know that they're basically done. the popular voice is turning against them. So a little bit of wag the dog along comes. Maybe a little war with Russia is exactly what's needed to distract people. I mean, this is not some far-flung out conspiracy. So I don't know definitively what's happened here, but it's something to watch in the coming weeks. And again, we have to be very grateful here in the U.S., friends, that Donald Trump got elected. This was a pressure release on our society. It is not inconceivable that in places like the United Kingdom, where they didn't get a Trump, they instead got a Keir Starmer, that they will have something akin to a civil war internally in their country. It's not inconceivable. Patriots are rising up. And by the way, that story about the English flag, absolute dead serious. That happened. It's on video. An 11-year-old child is getting questioned by the police. And the only offense is taking an English flag and showing up at a rally and cloaking themselves in that English flag. That's the state of things. You know, it's not looking good. And this is the West, right? This is the Western world. We Americans are different. This is a very important point to make. We have a unique identity here. And it comes from our founding principles coming from a revolution where we fought the sovereign. We fought a king. We fought a monarchy. We fought an oppressive state. We won, and we created a system of government that gave people personal responsibility, and we gave people personal freedoms. Enshrined liberty in our very essence, that is the United States. Americans are profoundly different. And one of the reasons that the left has tried mass migration here in the U.S., because they've looked to what's been done in Europe and they want to dilute what is Americanism. Has nothing to do with race, racism, etc. It has everything to do with the unique American spirit. We can absorb some immigrants, provided that they're compatible. If you look at Europe, I mean, they're changing these countries fundamentally to the point where they may not be salvageable. All right, folks, I'll see you later. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXMT.